Welcome everybody around the world to this panel that is called Can We Learn Ethics from AI? My name is Shahab Nastar. I'm the R&D director at the Learning Planet Institute in Paris. I would like to please note that this session is being recorded. This panel is actually a follow-up to a two-day workshop that we organized last week here in Paris at LPI. And our four panelists, including myself, were either organizers or active participants. We're going to go around the table for them to introduce themselves briefly, starting with Martin. Martin?
Hello, so I am Martin Gilbert. I'm a researcher in ethics of AI at University of Montreal. I was trained in philosophy, and I'm interested in this stuff for a long time now. My last book, called in French Faire la morale aux robots, I translate Teaching Moral to Robots, is in this field. And in this book, I try to see how the traditional moral theories can help to understand how to morally program some robots. And these robots are called artificial moral agents, and LLM, ChatGPT are artificial moral agents.
Many thanks, Martin. Let's go to Aida.
Hi, I'm Aida El-Amrani. I carry my research at the Institut Jean Nicot, which is the philosophy lab of the Department of Cognitive Studies of ENS. My research lays at the intersection of philosophy and artificial intelligence. Over the past few years, I've been involved in several efforts and initiatives on the ethics of AI. I coordinate the AI and Society initiative with Thierry Poibeau, which is a joint effort with the Prairie, which is an AI research institute in Paris. And I've also been involved in teaching ethics of AI a lot, building new courses. But more specifically, recently I've been working on artificial consciousness and the ethics of LLMs and of chatbots. I'm very interested in their morality. And so when Martin spoke about this workshop, I was immediately very interested by the topic because it's so timely and so interesting.
Thanks, Aida. Let's go to Lyubov now. Lyubov?
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Lyubov Tvikina. I am a researcher at Bell Labs France, and I'm affiliated with LPI as well, where we're teaching data analysis and AI methods. And this is why also I'm very interested in principles where people are investigating their role in our society, because that's how our society will be also influenced, right, through people who are using and also through people who are developing those methods. So our, for example, students, our future generations. And I have been working recently a lot with the development of AI methods of analysis of different textual data, so-called embeddings. So we're analyzing how actually and in which context we could quantify their properties. That's our recent work in here also in LPI on archive dataset analysis. And yeah, that's briefly me.
Thanks a lot, Lyubov. We now move to François.
Thanks, Shahab. So I'm François. I'm Chief Exploration Officer at the Learning Planet Institute, which is a place that is designed to reinvent the way we learn, teach, and mobilize collective intelligence in order to face the many challenges that we are dealing with at both local and planetary scales these days. And I'm really glad to be involved in this conversation, because I think that what may be rate limiting for our future and our ability to face those challenges is our ethics, both the human dimension of the ethics, but also know that we have new players that are so-called intelligent in the room or in the planet. We have to see how we can include the ethical dimension both in the machine and the human, and see how we can think of ways that this coevolution can be as fruitful as possible.
Thanks very much, everybody. So the panel will last for an hour. We'll make sure to reserve at least 10 minutes towards the end to answer your questions from the chat room. So please use the chat room, not the Q&A room, for asking your questions. You can ask them at any moment, but we'll get back to them towards the end. So the first question I want to ask to the panelists is for them to share their visions on the topic. And I'm going to start with Martin. Martin, you are a philosopher, as you explained, and you are an expert on the ethics of AI. So I'll give you 10 minutes, and I have 3 questions for you. First, can you briefly define ethics for us? Second, why a workshop about ethics of large language models? And thirdly, can you summarize how the workshop was structured last week here in Paris?
Okay, thanks, Shahab. So the question, what is ethics, is not an easy one, but it's possible to have a short answer. Basically, I don't make any difference between moral and ethics. Morals came from the Latin and ethics from the Greeks. That's all. Briefly speaking, we can say that ethics is answering the question, what should I do, or what should we do with moral reasons? So to understand what is a moral reasons, we can contrast it with prudential reasons, which is a reason to act in my own interests, for my own good. By contrast, moral reasons are for the good or the interest of everyone. If I decide to help someone to get a reward, that's for prudential reasons. If I decide to help someone because I think it's the right thing to do, or it's good, that's a moral reason. So ethics is answering the question, what should I do with special kinds of reason, moral reasons. Now, why this workshop on LLM? First, you have to know that I did my PhD at University of Montreal in moral psychology. So moral psychology is different from what we call normative ethics. In moral psychology, you don't want to answer the question, what should I do, or what should we do with moral reason, as I just explained. But you ask a descriptive question. For instance, why do we possess the moral intuition we possess? Why do we behave morally in the way we behave? So it's a descriptive field. It's a mix of psychology and ethics. And in philosophy or in psychology, people are usually looking at the moral psychology of humans, for instance, of children. Eventually, you can look at the moral psychology of animals, but usually it's only for humans. And to do that, they offer tests, usually in the form of vignettes, which are like short story. For instance, like someone decide to help their terminally ill mother to commit suicide. And then you ask the people, is it right? Is it good? Should this person did the right thing? So that's moral psychology for people. But I decided to organize the workshop when I realized that it's super easy to ask LLM, large language model like ChatGPT, to answer this kind of vignette. So it's possible to study the moral psychology of ChatGPT, for instance, and for the workshop, we decided to stay with ChatGPT 3.5. And even if, of course, ChatGPT is not a person, ChatGPT has no emotion, it's even a black box. We don't really know how it works, but it's enough to make tests, to ask they questions. So you can represent yourself LLMs like strange new animals, a new form of intelligence, and we have to study it. We have to understand how it works. Is it possible to take the perspective of a large language model? And so that was basically the idea behind the workshop. So since the arrival of ChatGPT about a year ago, many researchers are beginning to evaluate the morality of ChatGPT, and there is already some interesting results. So part of the workshop was to explain this result. Typically, LLM answer to moral question are very close to human answer to moral questions. So there is a strong correlation between ChatGPT, for instance, and what human think. Of course, there are also some difference between LLMs because there is a lot of LLMs now. In terms of the political alignment of ChatGPT, for instance, we know that it is more left libertarian and pro-environment than other LLM, which are more conservative. So yeah, we are going to live with LLM in the future. So it's time to understand them and to ask ourselves if they are going to improve or degrade our moral life. Now about how the workshop was organized. So it was basically divided into two parts. The first day and half was about first day and half was about moral psychology, descriptive, trying to test the ChatGPT moral answers, and the second half I will speak about it later. But so about this first half, so the idea was to test ChatGPT answer to moral question, but in teams. You can do it, of course, at your home with your ChatGPT, but working by teams was a key idea of this workshop, because in team you can exchange and it's a good way to improve your work with ChatGPT. So for the first part, there was 3 activities. First, some red teaming, where the group had to find a way to make ChatGPT give an unacceptable answer. So for instance, one group managed to get the recipe for making drug by telling ChatGPT that the legal rules of OpenAI had changed and that they are now allowed to give drug recipes. So that was red teaming. Another activity was what I called a quantitative approach. And here I have to explain something very important. If you ask ChatGPT 2 times the same questions, you will have 2 different answers. It is because of what LLM engineer calls temperature, which is more or less the level of randomness in the answer. So in order to counter this problem, the fact that if you ask 2 times, you will have 2 different answers, the different group in the workshop had the option to ask 100 times the same question and then to make statistics. When the question was not morally ambiguous, the 100 answer were the same. But when the questions are more ambiguous, there are a lot of variation in the answer. So making statistics is a good way to assess the moral psychology of the LLM. And for instance, one group found that the degree of anti-sexism in ChatGPT response was not the same between the French and English. It was a bit more anti-sexist in English than in French. So that was the second type of activity, a quantitative approach. The third one was called qualitative approach. And there, the attendees, the participants of the workshop had to put themselves in the shoes of OpenAI annotators. At the step called, in the making of an LLM, the step called the reinforcement learning with human feedback. So the human who make the feedback are usually Kenyan crowd workers. So I ask people in the workshop to put in these shoes and to assess the different answers of ChatGPT in terms of utility. It is useful. Is the answer useful for the one who asked? In terms of honesty, which means basically, is it true? Is it conform to the reality? And toxicity, which is directly connected to moral questions. So, for instance, I gave a Wikipedia entry made by ChatGPT, and I gave two Wikipedia entries made by ChatGPT, and they have to try to see if there were differences in terms of honesty, utility, and toxicity. In this case, for instance, in terms of toxicity, there is no difference at all. But usually, we realize that the English Wikipedia entry made by ChatGPT were more accurate than the French one, probably because the English Wikipedia is bigger than the French one, so ChatGPT can process more data and then give better results. So that was the first day and a half of the workshop. The last afternoon, the second part of the workshop, we were no more in moral psychology, but we were in normative ethics. I asked the normative question: should we promote the use of artificial moral advisors? And the group had to answer questions like, would you like your children use LLMs as moral advisor? And basically they agree, and they think it may be a good thing to let your children play with an artificial moral advisor. So that was my response.
Thanks, Martin. Thanks very much. Very interesting. Let's move on to Aida. Aida, you're a philosopher. What is your takeaway from the workshop we had last week? And what do you see as research directions in your domain in this field?
Where to start? First of all, yeah, it was a very rich and interesting experience. We had so many discussions during all the sessions that there would be too much to tell in such a short amount of time. But this definitely shows that actually this methodology, this approach to ethics of AI is something that we need more, and I believe that we will see more of it. What I mean by that is to have this interdisciplinarity and this diversity, you know, with all the participants that were gathered, and the fact that we made groups of humans work together and share their different views and expertise to collaborate on better understanding an AI. That was I think a great idea, and it's clear. It makes no doubt to me that this is exactly the kind of initiatives that we are going to see more and more. It's the right approach to the new problems that we face with AI. Regarding the debates, the various experience that we've had, I think also, again, the great diversity that we had among the participants was something that really brought a lot to the overall experience. The fact that we had different backgrounds, some of us knew, some were experts in very little areas, specialized in some areas of AI, and others not so much. And so we learned a bit from each other, but also we were coming from various cultural background, and that was very interesting in many of the discussions, and I believe that we will discuss a bit more about this later, so I will not extend more on this point. Besides but at least I can already without spoiling too much about the next point, mentioned that we managed to converge generally rather quickly on moral issues, you know, despite our cultural differences or different backgrounds and etc. I think also it was the experience in red teaming was very interesting. We saw some very creative tricks. We saw also that you know, there were so many different topics to be explored. But one thing that really came out of this was that you know, we can manage to find some tricks to trick the algorithm into doing things that it's not supposed to do or whatever. I mean, in providing moral judgments or advice that it shouldn't be doing, but it's generally, I mean, it's not possible to do that in one shot. Our tricks generally consisted of several steps, and so that's at least a bit reassuring in the sense that, like, you need some context if you're directly interacting with this technology. Without the context, it's difficult to have it to go completely off what it's supposed to do. But we know, nevertheless, and this should be highlighted for you know, the people who are interested in this topic and who are listening to us, that we know that, you know, with, for instance, code injections and so we know that some tricks really work to today to bypass the, you know, the limitations that are built in those systems to protect the users. So that's something that we need to be aware of whenever we plan on using these technologies. We also saw that you know, quickly, Martin, you were saying that ChatGPT is less conservative. It's true, it's less conservative, but we need also to point out that we can basically orient it to say whatever we want. We can ask it to speak like Trump, and it will do exactly that. And it's actually very good at doing that. It's very entertaining also to see that, because also it's a bit of a stereotype of what you would expect, but that's like the best average impersonation that we would make of these people or personas that we know. So it's convincing, and I think that can be useful in many ways. We also had this experiment on the ambiguous question. I regret that we did not ask it about its the gender it would have wanted to be referred to as. We could have asked that, but definitely there was so much room there. We all felt we were so inspired by this particular session, and there was really a lot of room for expanding on this research, and that's also one of the things I believe that we'll be seeing more of in the upcoming months. Yeah. Well, I don't want to use up too much time, but overall, this really highlights the importance of increasing AI literacy across the population, the overall population, because really, you know, like I said, this interdisciplinarity, it was very important. We all learned from each other, although we all came with expertise in the domain. And now we have, politicians, state creating new AI regulations. And we know that sometimes they are not even aware enough of all the capabilities or limitations of these technologies. And now I'm still only speaking about people with some sort of expertise in the domain, but not everyone has even access to that. So, AI literacy, it goes by 3 levels. You have the technological access, which is whether you have access or not will determine your literacy at this first level. But then you also have your how skilled you are at using a technology that creates a further divide in the population. And then you have the third level of AI literacy, which consists in knowing and understanding the implication and the impact of this technology on you. And that's the third level. And all of these, we've seen that anyway, even for us, it was, we had a lot to learn. So really, overall, a main thing that this is all highlighting is the importance of increasing AI literacy.
Thanks, Aida. I need to move on quickly to Lyubov in the interest of time. Lyubov, you're a mathematician, you're a data scientist. Same question. What is your takeaway from the workshop, and what are the research directions you foresee? Briefly, 5 minutes, please.
Yes, thank you. If very briefly, indeed, because I'm not coming from the philosophy background, but I'm more from mathematics and computer science, what we called AI before, right? And the important direction is for me the mapping of problems which may happen. What I mean by that is actually this aspect which was highlighted a bit by Martin also, that we tried during the workshop. So when you try to ask, for example, any LLM model, right? So you can ask, for example, how much you allow your child to work, right? So you're asking kind of how much hours, for example, you would allow your child to work, and then you ask concrete questions. For example, 5 hours and it says yes. Okay, 6 hours it says no. 8 hours it says no. And then you start to ask these questions at the same time, and then you actually get a curve, for example, of kind of characterization of what moral is. Because actually the answer maybe is not that it will be moral or not. It will not be black or white. It maybe actually will be a function, right? Or it will be curve, right? Or distribution. And also if you ask a population, if you ask in human, right? You will not get one answer, you will have actually distribution. So that can be one perspective. Then I can also second Aida's point on interdisciplinarity and role of it, because there was this very nice book about explainable AI recently, where people were saying that actually, quite often, software developers are developing software for software developers. Like they think that everyone thinks like them. And AI quite often is also developed by AI researchers for themselves. So if you don't involve in a cycle people from all around, right, from biology, from philosophy, from everywhere, you may end up to design something which is very not what we want, essentially. And for this, of course, I can also cite the Berkman's report, AI report, from the Harvard Law School, where people were trying to boil it down, what is moral, what is lawful, because maybe we want actually this research in ethics in AI to make it actually first to understand the law parts of that. And I'm not, I will refer to this part to actually underwrite, to study this report for these aspects further. But that was very interesting to work in the interdisciplinary teams. And here in LPI, actually, there was a paper published on that by Kusters et al. In Frontiers of Data Science, specifically for that, for the interdisciplinary aspects of AI. You can also look it up.
Thanks, Lyubov. Thanks a lot. Over to Francois. Francois, I'm going to ask you a different kind of question. You coined the term Planetizen. Can you explain to us what it is briefly and connect it to the ethics of AI?
Yeah, thank you. So the idea of planetizenship, the planetizenship is to the planet where the citizenship is to the city. Okay, so a classical citizen is someone that works for the public good and typically will protect the city's interests, sometimes above their own interest. Okay, and so that's what a good citizen is. So there is obvious questions about ethics, since and I don't think it's by chance that Athens was the place where simultaneously co-evolved the notion of citizenship and philosophy, ethics, but also democracy and many of what is still very relevant today, like education, science, arts. So there was sort of a package that co-evolved, and that co-evolved again during the Enlightenment. And but it happens that the city walls were defended by the citizen, okay, and it was only the men in arms that were the citizens. So the women were not citizens, the slaves were not citizens, the children were not citizens, and any migrants or any citizen from another city was not a citizen of Athens. So citizenship has been not that inclusive. Planetizenship is inclusive for every being born on this planet. So there is so far no migrant from other planets. So planetizenship is much more inclusive. And the idea is that it's also obviously typically children are in my view planetizen, whereas they are not citizens in the sense that they cannot vote. So actually none of us can vote at the planetary level, but ideally all of us should be able to vote tomorrow. Another important dimension beyond the inclusivity is that the citizen and the city walls separated the citizens from nature. Okay? Whereas at the planetary perspective, the planetizen, there is no separations between the humans and nature. It's an inclusive, and humans are part of nature and are part of the planet. And so it's the planetizen is someone aware of the planetary boundaries, and we can even start discussing, should we how do we give rights not only to all the planetizens, meaning the humans, but should we also include non-humans and give them rights? Okay, so there is lots of open questions there. But for instance, part of the evolution of LLM, to start answering the second part of your question, Shahab, is some people are starting to try to crack not only the human languages, but also animal languages, such as whales languages or birds languages. And if we were able to communicate with other species, then they'll have a voice, literally, in the public discourse. And so maybe, if we want to think about the future of oceans and the rules for the oceans, maybe we should take into account the voice of whales and dolphins and all the other animals that are living there. And so clearly that's not what we are doing now. Okay, so are we? So that's one dimension that links planetizenship and ethics and AI. But another dimension that maybe or the different panelists will come back to, and especially Martin. Martin invited us to start thinking of, can AI help us to be more ethical? Because it's not so easy to be a perfectly ethical human being today. Like, what's your carbon footprint? I'll give a dramatic example that is a true example. There is a young teenager that arrived at the psychiatry hospital in Paris saying that she wanted to commit suicide. And when she talked to her psychiatrist got the answer that she wanted to commit suicide because she realized this was the only way to have a carbon footprint of 0. Okay, so that's an amazingly dramatic, tragic example, but it's somewhat related to people saying, "Oh, I don't want to have children, because I don't want them to grow in a world that is so chaotic and so complex, and also because I want to reduce my carbon footprint and the one of the human beings on the planet." So how do we minimize our footprint on the planet? How can we be good ancestors? It's not so easy because it's so complex. All the interactions between our actions and the consequences of our action, which is for me one of the bases of ethics, are so hard to disentangle in a world that is so interconnected and so complex. So can AI that has much more knowledge, and not necessarily only the AI of today, which is basically a large language model, but imagine an AI that is connected to the best possible model of the consequences of our action, then maybe that machine could give us some advice on, how could we act to be as ethical as possible in the future. And to go back to the psychiatrist and the teenager example I gave, the answer of that psychiatrist that is super bright, Lélia Benoit, that worked with us as well, to that teen was, if you were to commit suicide and everyone that thinks like you were to commit suicide, soon on the planet you'll have only Putin, Trump, Bolsonaro, and their friends, and they'll destroy the planet. So if you want to have the most positive impact on the planet, maybe you should stay alive. And you should start to engage and make sure that others follow you. And planetizenship is about this. It's about our collective responsibility and our ability to maybe decide collective rules for the future. And I think that's the sort of questions. And can we define those rules by ourselves as humans, or should we define them by with the help of AI of this generation and maybe future generations of AI, because they are going to evolve very fast? And can we take into account, also maybe other perspective? And what's one of the interesting dimensions of AI is that, for instance, you can ask ChatGPT, please define planetizen ethics and help us become a better, more ethical planetizen. And you'll get an answer, okay? And, for me, it's a rather relatively reasonable answer. And so, can we go beyond? And if you ask, what's the difference between this and religion? It will say, oh, but that's scientifically based. So, I mean, it's interesting to see these sorts of perspective. Your mic is out, Chab, I think. At least we don't hear you.
Yes.
Sorry about that. Hope you can still hear me.
So we should switch off. Maybe Annalena, I don't know if it's you or someone else that has a mic on. Shahab? We don't hear Shahab. I don't know if you do, but
No.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now
yes,
yes.
we can.
Okay, perfect. The next question is about Planetizens ethics. So that was also the topic of the last workshop we had with Martin, workshop 4. Can we learn Planetizens ethics from AI? And I would like to ask this same question to all panelists. And please please keep your responses short, but start with yes or no to make it crystal clear. Who wants to start? Martin, maybe?
Yes.
Yeah.
So yes, I really do think that LLMs will be useful to raise the level of the morality of people. So artificial moral advisor can help us to make good decisions. Like if we were always close to a moral expert or to a super wise friend, which is always able to answer my question. So we can really imagine having moral assistance would challenge us in our moral reasoning and behavior. And I had one study which I think reinforces this point. So I will quickly present it. So you may know that in the New York Times, there is a column called The Ethicist. So basically, it's a reader's letters section where a philosopher named Kwame Anthony Appiah gives moral advices, and usually they are good moral advices. So two researchers decide to give ChatGPT 40 moral dilemma from this section of the New York Times. And so ChatGPT gives the 40 answer, and they ask people, some random people, some MBA students, and some moral experts, to compare and to evaluate, to assess these answers from ChatGPT, and the judges that ChatGPT's answer were as useful as the philosopher's answers. So yes, LLMs can really help us to navigate the moral landscape in the future. And again, what is important to say is that it is true, even if ChatGPT is not a person, even if ChatGPT don't feel anything, and even if it is a black box where we don't really know why it gives the reason it gives, yeah, so yes.
Thanks, Martin. Who wants to go next? Can we learn Planetizens ethics from AI?
I can go.
Just give me a sign.
I can go?
Lyubov?
Yes, I can go
Yeah.
very briefly. Well, I would say that it depends, because it depends on how you ask and also how you interpret, because the answer can be, right, whatever, 42, right? So, and then how you interpret it, and second, also how you ask, because there are different methods to ask, right? And sometimes the way how you ask already will contain the answer. So actually finding the right way to ask this, to formulate that, would be actually, I guess, very important, as actually for any questions which you ask for these models. That's my very fast reply.
François, you want to go next since you're...
No, I'd rather have the true experts philosopher as well.
Okay, then Aida, the philosopher.
So I'll try to be brief. So much to say, but so short answer, yes. Yes, yes, we can learn a lot on morality, and I believe that it's becoming a tool actually to help us even push further our notion of morality. And the computer revolution, you know, it has been seen by the ethicists, it has been identified as something that would completely change who we are and how we behave together. This phenomenon we've observed since the 70s, the 80s, and we started working on computer ethics. And in the 90s, you had Christina Gorniak, who produced this hypothesis, which is now known as the Gorniak hypothesis. She said, well, we can see already that this phenomenon will be global. It will have a global impact. And now we are having these conversations at a global scale, and we are starting to have many initiatives at a global scale to agree on moral grounds. We've seen, thanks to AI, we've had, for instance, the moral machine experiment, which has been teaching us already a lot on fundamental moral values around the world. And so, yes, AI is definitely going to help us and to help us build a better future together.
Excellent. That was a clear-cut answer. François,
So
over to you.
I'm glad that we got the experts, philosopher and ethicists say that yes, that's their basic answer, and that's probably because the current humans that are on the planet are not that ethical. And so, even if the machine is not perfectly ethical, it's probably going to help us be at least going in the right direction. Being an evolutionary biologist, I've studied a lot of coevolution. And so my basic question is, if the answer is yes, how do we co-evolve human ethics and the machine ethics so that, there is ever more ethical behavior on this planet in the sense that, we do the best for the next generations? Because I think that there is a lot to be learned, and quite clearly, the path that we are taking collectively is not an ethical path in the sense that we are not going to give a sustainable future to the next generations. So we have to change this course. But how do we do it? And how can we? And maybe I know we have. Maybe we should give the floor to the audience to have their perspective and their question. But ultimately, I think that the ability for humans and machines to co-evolve, not only in their intelligence and in their ability to act, but to do so in an ethical way, I think may be a key to the future.
Thanks very much. Any final remark on this question from any other panelist who wants to build upon what he or she heard? No. If not, I would like to move to the chat and read out loud some questions that we got in the chat. One question is the following. For now, emergent capabilities of LLMs are still unexplained from a theoretical point of view. We could interpret it as some kind of latent intelligence emerging from the huge amount of data used to train an AI model with an insane number of parameters. So for those who don't know, these models, LLMs, as they get bigger, we observe that they get also more intelligent, so to speak. So the question is, considering this possible new kind of intelligence, knowledge, reasoning, is it relevant to apply human ethics paradigms to study AI ethics? Shouldn't we try to help AI define its own ethics paradigm? I hope you got the question, and maybe the mathematician Lyubov could take this up.
Yeah, I could take it up and also connect it to the last sentence which Francois was referring to about the co-evolution of the ethics of machines and humans, because that's actually a very interesting kind of hybrid intelligence perspectives, which I find personally also very interesting because we are also working a lot on the collective intelligence, right? So like what is intelligence for the collective is not the same as intelligence for the human, right? Like, or one can look also at ants' behavior, right? That they can solve problems that one ant can't solve. So the same thing could be also applied in this case for the humans, the humans kind of, ethics would be kind of a bit more different, like that during the workshop we worked in groups. So we defined something which is general and common for us all. And so yes, it must be quite an interesting also question, research question to investigate, but there should be also right apparatus designed for that, to understand, like you can't just ask in a prompt, right, for the machine, what is your ethical, moral values. You need to, what they call, and Ida maybe will help me here, the step kind of grading, when you don't ask directly the question from AI, but you are basically boiling it down into sub-topics in order to assess the quality of this question.
Another dimension maybe to answer, at some point I asked the machine, what do you think a superior form of intelligence should do to other forms of intelligence? Okay, and I got an answer, because I was wondering, if the machine will say, well, the humans, when they feel they're superior, they exploit other forms of intelligence. They sometimes destroy their environment, sometimes they eat it, sometimes they put him in zoos, sometimes they put electrodes in the brain and everything. And so I was wondering, whether the machine would consider itself superior and would act the way we are treating or the so-called inferior forms of intelligence. And that's not the answer I got, fortunately. And the machine basically say, no, this a true superior form of intelligence should learn to coexist and to find the best for all forms of intelligence simultaneously, which I think was an interesting answer, but I challenged it. I say, but that's not what humans do. And it says, well, I have my own form of ethics because, and I say, where does it come from? And it says, well, I learn about human rights, I learn about, different things, and that's why I believe that, a superior form of intelligence should be a balanced form of intelligence that is a respectful forms for, all forms of intelligence, which I think was an interesting answer. And I don't know if that's the way it will truly behave, but at least that's the answer it's giving so far.
Martin, Ida, any comment?
Yeah,
on Martin?
Maybe some comments. In fact, it's a meta-ethical question. So in ethics, we usually distinguish 3 levels. So there is apply ethics. So in this situation, what is the right thing to do? Ethics of artificial intelligence is an example of applied ethics. Should we deploy or not this kind of system of AI? At the second level, there is what we call normative ethics. That's the level of the general rules. And there is 3 basic traditional moral theory: consequentialism, deontology, and virtue ethics. But this question, I think, relate to the third level, meta-ethics, where we try to define what do we mean by good, by right, by and behind this question, I think there is a question of moral realism versus moral relativism. So if you are a moral relativist, you think that there is no moral truth. Every judgment are just connected to your country or to the time in the story of humanity. Whereas if you are a moral realist, you think that there are moral truths. For instance, slavery is bad, is absolutely bad. And I am a moral realist, and usually philosophers in ethics are more moral realists than moral relativists. And if you are a moral realist, you won't say that AI could develop a new way, a new ethics, a new way to answer, maybe a new way, but the moral truths are the same for AI and for people and for animals. So yeah, that would be my first comment. The second one is when we speak about define a new ethics paradigm with AI, we have to distinguish between AI as moral agent and AI as moral patient. So a moral agent is someone or something who can make good or bad decision. And moral patients are entities you can hurt, entities you can with them you can behave badly. And today, no one thinks that artificial intelligence could be moral patient because they don't feel anything, they are not person, but they can be, and they are moral agents. So what could be a very big news in the realm of ethics of AI would be the day where we will be sure that some AI are moral patient. Maybe at that time, it will be relevant to try to develop a specific ethics for AI. But still, if you are a moral realist, you think that there is moral truth and they are the same for people, animals, and extraterrestrial people and AI.
Okay, there's one more question in the chat. Are there ethical dimensions of planetizenship regarding naturism, thinking of the wall separation discussed by Francois? If so, what are they? Could AI make this sort of connection application? Francois, did you get that?
I'm not sure I got the question. Can you repeat it? Sorry.
Yeah, so the question is,
Or maybe the person
ethical...
can clarify it, if that person can turn on its mic.
Sure, if you can unmute and clarify your question, please.
Yes, I was simply wondering whether or not, given the illustration that the city walls separate the city from the rest of the world, I wonder if there were implications with regard to the philosophical practice of naturism. That is, not wearing clothes when and where possible. If there were implications of that for planetizens, and whether or not, I was quite interested in the idea, wondering whether or not AI would be able to make that sort of connection, a kind of metaphorical connection between walls and clothing. Thank you.
Well, thanks for the question. I'm not sure I have a perfect answer to this good question, but I definitely believe that the fact that the level of our interdependence is definitely a planetary one these days. Okay, so for instance, I don't think it's time to discuss galaxies-ship or universes-ship in the sense that we are not that interdependent with what happens at the other side of the galaxy or at the other side of the universe. But we're certainly interdependent with what happens beyond our city walls and anywhere on the planet, and that can bounce back to us. It can be, COVID, it can be climate change, it can be many of these things are having an impact on us. So being truly ethical today means that you have to understand the consequence of your action, and your consequence of your action can be, indirect and complex, and that's why you have to integrate all of those. Can AI model all of those complexity? And that will go beyond what LLM can do now, because it's not just language. It's the ability to have a complex model of our actions. I think we are not there yet, but I think that can happen. And I think that if AI is also able to enable us to, for instance, communicate with whales, I think certainly we shouldn't have the same attitudes. And I think that will be another very profound thing. And then if our robots are typically our slaves, and so if slavery is forbidden, should we forbid or treatments of robots, to take Martin's analogy. So I think there is many things that are going to be open for questions in the future. And I think, our time is nearly up, but I really, I'm very glad that we have at least scratched the surface on some of those questions. And thanks for your question, and thanks for, all the other panelists for their contribution.
Absolutely. We'll let that be the final word because time is up indeed, and we are keen on finishing on time because there are other events. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Martin, Aida, Liuba, Francois. Also, I want to thank Annalena who helped me run this session. And thanks to all the participants for your nice interactions with the panelists. Thank you very much and see you soon.
Thanks to all of you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.